The first activities within the peer process relates to evaluation and eligibility process. Peer provides 4 versions of prior written notice, PWN, designed specifically to capture the notice and/or consent requirements as they relate to evaluation and eligibility determination procedures. These versions include notice and consent for initial evaluation, notice of eligibility ineligibility, consent for the initial provision of ESE services, notice and consent for reevaluation. Each of the documents contain the 7 required components of prior written notice, which include a description of why the action is proposed, an explanation of why the district proposes to take the action, a description of each evaluation procedure, assessment, record, or report reviewed and used as a basis for the proposed action, a description of any other factors that are relevant to this proposal, a description of any other options that were considered and the reasons why these options were rejected, a statement that the parents of a child with a disability have protection under the procedural safeguards, and if this notice is not an initial referral for evaluation, the means by which a copy of the procedural safeguards can be obtained, and sources for the parents to contact to obtain assistance in understanding the provision of the procedural safeguards. Within this section of peer also includes written summary analysis for intellectual disability, specific learning disability, and language impairment, which must be used when addressing these eligibilities. All evaluation and eligibility processes are accessed from the student dashboard. Click the Evaluation and Eligibility tab. Evaluation and eligibility documents that have been completed or are in process will be presented. Before beginning a new process, verify that an open document does not already exist. Open documents are identified by gold shading. Click the Add button and select from the available options in the drop-down list to create a document. The notice and consent for initial evaluation describes the evaluation the district is proposing and documents the request for parental consent. If the evaluation will address both disability and giftedness, a single notice reflecting all aspects of the student's suspected exceptionalities should be developed. Please note, the general meeting notice is used in focus to notice the parent of the meeting to discuss the aforementioned. In peer, if a student is already eligible as a student with a disability under IDEA, for example, ASD, and there is a suspicion the student is gifted, this would be considered an initial evaluation to address gifted, and the notice and consent for initial evaluation would be used to document the evaluation the district is proposing. Vice versa would occur if the student was gifted only and if there is a suspicion of a disability under IDEA. In peer, a response is required for each prompt. When applicable throughout the document, items expand when checked to present sub-items or descriptive text boxes. Instructions on the screen indicate when a sub-item or text box is required. Whenever other is selected as a response, a brief description must be entered in the associated text box. To describe the action proposed, click the radio button indicating whether this initial evaluation will address a suspected disability, giftedness, or both. The purpose of the evaluation influences the timeline for completion as well as the type of procedural safeguards that apply. Next, we will explain why the district proposes to take the action. Check all that apply. A brief explanation is required when the team determines general education intervention procedures are inappropriate for this student. Describe each evaluation procedure, assessment, record, or report reviewed and used as the basis for the proposed action. Check all that apply. When RTI is selected, a specific targeted intervention area or areas for which data were reviewed must be identified. Since IDEA requires an evaluation to address all areas related to the suspected disability, the team is asked to identify the exceptionality or exceptionalities it believes may be having an impact on the student's performance, as this will guide decisions about the specific evaluation procedures to be proposed. Check all that apply. The response to this item is used to pre-populate the proposed evaluation procedures prompt below. Next, we will describe any other factors that are relevant to this proposal. Other factors may include things as possible underlying medical conditions, the student's status as an English language learner, or specific requests by the parent. If no other factors apply, indicate this in the text box. Describe the evaluation procedures the district is proposing to conduct. As suspected exceptionalities are checked above, the minimum evaluation procedures required for school-age students populate here. All responses are editable. Add or delete items to describe the proposed evaluation as accurately as possible. Describe any other options that were considered and the reasons why those options were rejected. For example, if a request was made by the parent is being refused, describe the request here and explain why it is being refused. A copy of the procedural safeguards must be given to the parent upon initial referral or parent request for evaluation. Indicate how this is being provided. Click the radio button indicating how the parent was provided a copy of the procedural safeguards. If a copy will not be attached to this notice, describe how it will be provided. Clicking on the procedural safeguards within the prompt redirects you to the Florida Department of Education website, from which copies of the notice in multiple languages can be accessed. The next section addresses sources for the parents to contact to obtain assistance understanding the provisions of IDEA, Florida statutes, and rules governing exceptional student education. Enter the name or title and a contact phone number or email address for each source. Enter the name and or title/position of the individual to whom the parent should return the signed consent form. When all items are complete, click the Save Data and then click Finalize. If any required items are left blank, an error message will be presented. Action buttons float at the bottom of the screen. Selecting Save Data for the first time creates the record in Peer. If you start a document in error and have not yet saved any data, click Cancel. You will be returned to the student dashboard without creating a record. Select Print Draft to review the content in draft PDF form. Select Finalize to lock the completed document. An error message will appear if there are missing items. Please note, in Peer, once a document is finalized, it cannot be unlocked for correction. Remember to save data frequently to prevent loss of content. On some of the documents in Peer, you will notice an option to print documents in Spanish and Haitian Creole. These are the only two languages to which a translation is provided in Peer. Review content for accuracy and completeness before finalizing. Once finalized, a document cannot be edited or revised. An authorized user acknowledgement prompt is presented during the finalization process to ensure the notice is completed by appropriately authorized personnel. Check the box indicating that you are authorized by the district to complete the document. You will now be redirected to the Consent for Initial Evaluation of ESE Services dashboard. You have now been redirected to the student dashboard within the Notice and Consent for Initial Evaluation dashboard. You will see the language for which you chose the notice and consent to be printed for signature. Click the blue button to view the PDF of the Notice and Consent for Initial Evaluation to print for signatures. The next section reviews the sections within the Notice and Consent for Initial Evaluation dashboard. Additional dashboard functionality includes documenting the receipt of parental consent in the 60-day timeline. Due to variations in the district calendar, PEER does not automatically calculate the 60 days these dates are entered by the user. In documenting whether the parent agreed to allow evaluators to amend the evaluation plan at their discretion based on information or results obtained during the course of the information. If needed, the user can create additional copies of the notice to send home. If the parent does not respond within a reasonable amount of time, or if a translation is needed. Note, the user can change the language of the document when adding a new notice. The comment screen shows how the user can enter comments relevant to the request, such as documenting communication with the parents or the district's attempt to contact them. There are instances when the student dashboards cannot be completed at the time of the meeting. For example, the parent was not in attendance. To return to the dashboard at a later time to document the parent's response or to update relevant sections to document the date consent was received, the user will click on the finalized document, which will open the dashboard related to the specific document. The next step in the PEER process will include a written summary if the team is considering SLD, LI, or IND. The written summary of group analysis for SLD, LI, and IND is found under the Evaluation and Eligibility tab. The written summary forms are intended to capture the team's discussion and analysis. The forms guide the team through a series of questions where the information is documented in narrative form and includes all required components. Specific training on the written summary forms will be provided in a separate training module.